All right, let's go over glazing basic application methods. Now there are other videos that actually have the step-by-step instructions on it, like actually demonstrating, but this gives you the kind of note part, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. First of all, you need to know what the basic application methods are, and first, pouring, brushing, sponging, dipping, and spraying. We rarely do spraying. That tends to be more problematic, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So first of all, how and when to pour. You almost always want to use pouring when you're using glaze for the inside of a pot. That way you're not going to mess up the outside. You only want to do one coat when you're pouring. If you do more than that, it's going to be too thick, and then it's likely going to crack as that glaze dries. And then it looks like water on a newly waxed car is just going to bead up, which is called crawling. If you're going to brush glaze, which is what we do the most probably, we do that usually on the outside of the pots. Some pots may be brushed on the inside, but generally we pour the inside, and we're going to brush the outside. It is the most common method of application for us. If you go to college and you've only got 10 glazes to work with, odds are good there you're going to dip. But for us, the most common application method is going to be brushing. For brushing, a total number of coats, 2 to 3. So if you're layering and getting different glazes together there, you only want to use 2 to 3 total. Some glazes will need more. Look at the label on the on the containers to see what it is you actually need. Some of the glazes with the very small tops, the gallon glazes with the small tops, those might require 3 to 4 coats. Look on the side if you are uncertain. Again, the total number of coats in general, 2 to 3. Not 2 to 3 of each glaze. If you've got 4 to 6 layers of glaze, it's going to run off and just create a complete mess of your pot and probably the inside of the kiln as well. But if you're layering glazes, one of my favorite combinations is robin's egg and amethyst matte. Amethyst matte by itself is gross. 1 coat of that on top of 2 coats of robin's egg is fabulous. The orders of the layers does make a difference. So if you did 1 coat of amethyst matte and then 2 of robin's egg, it will give you a completely different look. If you're going to sponge the glazes, very often we're only using the sponging to put on top of another color. Sometimes you'll do just sponging, and in that case you would use 3 to 4 coats, but usually, again, just like the last slide, it's usually a contrasting color, 1 coat of that sponged over 2 coats generally brushed of another glaze. If you're only using sponging, no brushed underneath, but just sponging, again, 3 to 4 coats. The number of coats referred to a solid layer, not a kind of splotchy layer, and I'll show you that in the video. If you're going to dip glazes, you don't need that very often, but if you've got smaller pots or ones with lots of cutout designs, but if you've got smaller pots, it's most helpful if you've got lots of smaller pots. If you've only got one, it really is easier just to brush it and get it over with. Just like when you're pouring, the glaze needs to be on the thin side. It should not be really thick. If it is, again, it's going to be too thick and it's going to crack and peel off and cause problems. Whether you're pouring or dipping, your pots must be rinsed the day that you do it. Otherwise, it's going to absorb too much water from the dipping or the pouring, and again, the glaze will be too thick. Just like pouring, only 1 coat. Although you can do a light sponge layer of contrast on top, but no more than that. If you have lots of designs on it, you may want to consider doing a clear dip. For example, the advanced folks, when they're doing their underglaze sgraffito, the clear is a good one if you want to just dip it to show that color underneath. You do not need to dip every pot that you glaze. Not everything needs to be dipped in clear. A lot of times at the middle school or at the elementary, that does need to happen because they're using totally different types of glaze than what we are. So again, the clear is only if you're covering up the actual clay body, not as something you need to add after every glaze. Make sure the bucket, as well as anything else you use, is mixed really well. If you're uncertain whether to use clear, please ask. Again, it's just another glaze. It's not something to do on top of everything else. Generally speaking, we rarely spray, mostly because it's kind of a pain to set up, and then also a pain to take down, and it can waste a lot of glaze. Some of our glazes should not be sprayed. They're formulated to be brushed or dipped. Most of them are not sprayed or ready to spray because they've got larger particles that just don't spray that well, or they may be dangerous if they're sprayed and become airborne. If you do spray, which again is unlikely to happen in here, good ventilation is a must because airborne glazes are a health risk. Glaze in general is more dangerous than the clay. That's why you should never eat or drink in here, but airborne, even more of a problem. If we were to spray the glaze, the reason would be some glazes are easier to get consistent if you spray. It's really not an issue for most of our glazes. So there will not be a spraying demo. And that's it for this particular presentation.